we talked about it briefly, but Acevedo said that this officer is going to get charged.
Yeah.
What charges potentially does he face?
Well, so there's twofold, right? I mean, I've heard all the way up to murder.
Yeah,
on the state side.
Felony murder?
And now there is, the FBI's come out and said they're investigating criminal civil rights violations on the federal statutes.
And is there a recourse for the next of kin to the individuals who were killed?
Sure. I mean, look.
Well, what was the case that ended up bringing the Rosenthal, and I forget the name, but the two brothers who sued the sheriff's department, and then that led to the Chuck Rosenthal emails that then
and that's why, in my opinion, when, not if, when the family sues, the estate sues the city, this is going to be the quickest settlement in the history of the city because the city cannot afford to go through the civil discovery on this. Nope. They just can't.
I mean, you can read that article in the Chronicle.
Oh, gosh.
That goes back to 92.
And
it's, I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Got to be.
I mean, they would open up so much stuff.
Oh, God.
And they'd learn where Goines learned this stuff.
Right.
Who that person learned from. Yeah.
It would be
they have no interest in doing that whatsoever.
No.
I was having a debate with actually, shockingly, a defense lawyer yesterday about whether or not the elements of felony murder are met here. And his argument was against it, saying, well, but he's got a defense because he's acting on a valid warrant. And my argument was it's not a valid warrant. Maybe the other officers, I would say you have to separate them out. You've got the guy who if he did, lied in the affidavit and knew this wasn't a valid warrant because he did not have probable cause.
Sure.
And a warrant has to be based on probable cause. He knew. He's probably the only person who knew that this warrant was not based on probable cause. Does that make it a valid warrant? The question is, does it have to be a valid warrant for him to have that defense, or is it just a warrant?
Well, is there a good faith exception in Texas?
I believe so.
There is, and didn't Franks v. Delaware settle that, though? If you take out the false part of the affidavit that doesn't, and then does the affidavit stand on probable cause there? If it doesn't, then the warrant is invalid.
I think Texas has a
the question is that we had is, does it matter if the warrant's valid? Or does it just matter that the officer had a warrant signed by a magistrate? My opinion is no. I think this one officer, if this is all true, and that's, of course, the question we have to answer, if this is all true, and this officer knew this was not a valid warrant based on probable cause, does he have a defense? My opinion is no.
No,
he doesn't.
Absolutely not. If he knew,
right?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think that, but I think your distinction is exactly right. What was his? Is there a good faith exception in Texas? And I think there is, but I think Texas has a trick that distinguishes it from the federal side.
Well, and I think the other officers, I think it's pretty clear if they weren't there, if they didn't know this was not a valid warrant, they're covered. Now, maybe there are some other things they'll be charged with. I understand one of them maybe lied in a report. Maybe he gets charged or certainly fired for that. But if the other guys who went in didn't know, then they're covered. And that brings up, kind of what I think what you were talking about earlier, JV, about how he goes in and kills these two people. Well, if he lied in that warrant, which it's certainly looking like he did, if he lied in that warrant, not only did he kill those two people and that dog, but he put his other fellow police officers literally within inches of their lives.
Right.
And that's something nobody's really talked about. We've all obviously focused on the poor people who've been shot and killed, but what about his fellow officers who were relying on him and he walked them into a death trap?
That's what you asked about morale earlier. I really want to know what morale's like around HPD. I want to know how many officers, and I suspect the majority of them are very angry with Detective Goines, because the majority of police officers are decent human beings and they want to do the right thing. And when there's a bad apple, just like we all get angry when we find out about an attorney doing something that makes us all look bad, I got to believe that there's a lot of angry people over there. But I'm just real curious some of those conversations going, because Goines is in the hospital, right?
I think he's out of ICU is what I read, but he's still in the hospital.
I'm curious how kind of angry conversations are being had around there.
Dude says the confidential informant has provided informant and assistance to officers in the past on at least 10 prior occasions. He made up this guy.
Yeah, the allegation is there's no actual CI, right? No confidential
informant. He just made him up.
Yeah.
Is the allegation.